Today's conversation is a very exciting one, very chock full of information. I speak with Gerardo Razumney, who has been handling the fully hybrid Zoom-based musical performance called the Salon or the Zalan. Now, a bit of background. I have worked with the Salon creator, Andrea Clearfield, in Philadelphia. She has hosted musical artists in her home every month. Each artist gets to play for 10, 15 minutes, all kinds of genres, from Polish vocal choral to Zydeco to Brazilian to Irish folk to anything you can imagine. It has been performed at the Salon. And you could have upwards of 10 different types of performances happen in her living room every month. And she has been doing this for over 30 years. When COVID hit, she couldn't do the performances in her living room anymore. So she shifted to Zoom. And then when COVID started to allow for people to gather again, then it shifted to a hybrid event. And the people that Andrea found have been able to take this and utilize Zoom, a business chat application not suited to concert musical performances, and utilize it in a way. And not only did they take it from fully remote people performing one at a time, but a fully hybrid event whereby the local performances can be seen by remote audiences. The remote performances can be seen by and heard by local audiences. And there's an audience locally and remotely, and they can be heard and seen as well. It is very intense. It takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of time to make it happen the right way. And today's episode is going to give you insight into how that happens. Gerardo, so tell me a little bit about your background and, when COVID hit, someone reached out to you to sort of spearhead this virtual production of the musical Salon. Tell me where you came from and how you approached this solution.
Do we have enough time?
Okay. Give me the Cliff Notes version.
Sure. Well, I have a background in chemistry and physics. I'm a scientist, and I was doing research for some time, and then I moved on to other fields. And I'm also interested in music. I've been playing music for many years, folk music from different parts of the world. And as a result of that, I had to get involved in sound production because that was part of the job. I essentially taught myself, but because I had been doing work with equipment, electronic equipment for years in my work, that was pretty natural to me. So I had no problem understanding what booing audio was. It was much simpler than what I had done in research. So I got involved in that. I was doing sound engineering, sound production for an organization in Philadelphia that presents concerts. Crossroads Music is the name of the organization. We presented concerts, about, 12, 16 concerts a year. And I was doing the sound for the concerts together with other people. Took turns. So at some point, Andrea Clearfield had lost the person who was doing audio engineering for her. So I stepped in and I started doing it there. It was pretty natural, nothing out of this world. It was very simple, really. 4 mics or something like that. Nothing out of the ordinary. And then the pandemic hit, and she moved to Zoom. So I had not done that, but I got involved, and I started learning, and I was doing that for a while. At one point, she wanted to move when the pandemic was subsiding a little bit, she was interested in going hybrid. Now, hybrid is a situation in which you have both remote and local performers and remote and local audience. And you want the communication to go both ways. Now, that is a complicated issue.
That is the hardest way to do it.
Yeah, it is hard. But the idea was that we wanted communication, we wanted feedback, we wanted people to be able to comment on things, to talk to the performers. So that was the only way to do it was with Zoom. There are other platforms that are simpler for presenting a concert to an audience, to a passive audience, but it makes the audience passive, which is not what we wanted. So I had to deal with that situation, and the complication is that the MC for both kinds of setups was the same person, Andrea. So she had to participate in two different stages, basically. There's a Zoom stage in which she was emceeing the remote performers, and there was a local stage in which she was emceeing for the local performers. And we had to, but she was in the same place. And one of the problems with Zoom, that's crucial, is that you cannot have two Zoom participants in the same acoustic space. That is deadly. It's just the recipe for disaster, unless you're extremely careful. And the reason, the way you have to be careful is that they cannot be active live at the same time. So that required a lot of care in how you switch from one configuration to the other. It involved using different acoustic requirements, because when Andrea was talking to the remote audience, she was in front of one camera, and that had to be amplified for the local camera, for the local audience in one way. There was also a monitor, a display monitor, so the local audience could see the remote performers, and that would come from the essential front of house speakers. When she was talking when she was emceeing the local performers, she had to be in a different position, different stage, using a different mic or the same mic routed differently. We actually split her mic for both configurations, and also we had to use a different speaker for her, because it didn't make sense to have her coming from the front of house speakers. So in addition, we had the two conflicting needs, perhaps. Some of the local performers require amplification, some sound reinforcement, some did not require it, and some have a mixture of both. For instance, a singer with a microphone and someone on the piano who didn't require any sound reinforcement in that space.
I think that's a key thing too, because people might not realize it. You go to a concert or whatever, there's a microphone on everybody, but Andrea's salons are a little bit different in that a lot of it can be completely acoustic, because the audience in the room is literally feet away. You could reach out and touch the audience. So if somebody is just performing with a guitar or a flute or something like that, they don't technically need amplification for the local audience. And, for all the years that she's been doing it, a lot of the times there hasn't been amplification for a lot of the performers.
Correct. Well, a guitar may or may not need it. If the guitarist is playing by himself, he doesn't need any sound reinforcement. If he's playing with a trumpet and a sax,
and
he
a drum,
definitely needs it. he definitely needs it. If there's a drum, you have to be very careful that it doesn't drown everyone else. So, the usual problem. So, because of that, there were two options. One was to mic everyone and have one mix for Zoom and a different mix for the house. That require a lot of
work,
setting up, a lot of setting up, because you had to mic everyone in every set. Remember that there are 10 sets per concert, per salon. So that's a lot of changes.
Right. I mean, because realistically, having I was at the salon for several years myself, and I just did an ambient recording of it with a stereo microphone in the front of the room. And sometimes, some performers are just like 2 or 3. Sometimes, 10 people might go up there, and it can be quite a to-do, and each group is only performing for 10, 15 minutes. So there's a whole lot going on when this changes.
Yeah, exactly. So what I decided to do was something a little different. I decided to have enough mics for whatever sound reinforcement was required in each set, but not more than that. And that was what provided the local amplification, what the local sound essentially was a mix of mics and unmic performers. And in addition to that, I put a stereo pair that would pick up the sound. I must add, the house speakers in the salon are not, as they usually are, forward of the stage. They're in back of the stage. And because of that is first they function as monitors, which saves having another mix, and also it allows us to mix the amplified sound and the unamplified audio in a way that's very natural for the stereo pair that's hanging above the audience, a sort of front of the audience above them. And so the Zoom feed comes from that stereo pair only.
And that makes a lot of sense, because if anybody goes to a classical concert, you're going to see microphones that are suspended above the stage to pick things up. And one of the really nice things with her salon is that the space itself gives the whole performance a certain sound. So, it's very different when you get an individual isolated sound from each instrument, and then somebody has to sit there and manage each one. Whereas if you get the total sound of the room, the audience who is remote is hearing the same thing as the people in the room.
Correct. So that freed the sound engineer, whoever is sitting at the console, to do just a local mix. They don't have to worry about the Zoom mix. There is next to that person, there is whoever is doing the hosting, the Zoom hosting, has access to the sub from which the sound is taken for Zoom, and can adjust the overall level if it's necessary to reduce it a little bit or increase it a little bit, depending on the particular group that's playing. But there is no mix to adjust, just the overall level. And so that makes it simplifies things.
How did you transition between a local performer going out into Zoom and a remote performer coming into the room? What is that process?
Okay. For the remote performers, we have an interface on Andrea's laptop. That is the Zoom client for the remote section. We speak, our shorthand is we talk about the remote performance as the salon and the local performance as the salon. So we know what we are referring to, what configuration we're talking about. So for the salon, the client is Andrea's laptop connected to an interface, a simple USB interface with two mic inputs and line output and phone output. It's very, very simple. I'm using a Yamaha, which is a Steinberg, which is made by Yamaha, really, and it's very, very, very good, reliable. So we take the Zoom input, the Zoom, okay. For the Zalon configuration, there is a Zoom input, which I call input, what Andrea's voice going into that interface with one mic. Well, it's a little different. Andrea has one interface that goes to the mixer. From the mixer, we can split it and have one configuration, one channel for local performances and one channel for remote performances. The channel for remote performances go back to the Steinberg, feeds the Steinberg, the interface, and from there to the laptop. The Zoom output, which I mean the remote performers audio, comes back the same way, and it's directed to the mixer again, from where it goes to the front of house, so that people can hear it. We have another participant, Zoom participant, totally separate, that takes care of the video. It's receives the Zoom, the image of the remote performers, and displays it in a large monitor in front of the house in the stage, so the local people can see the remote performers and hear it. It's a slight problem that there may be some sync issues there because there are two different clients, but we haven't seen that as a serious problem. It hasn't been a problem. That's for the Zalon configuration. For the Salon configuration, Andrea moves to another stage where the local camera can see her. Her laptop becomes out of the system. We first mute the mute before unmute is the key here. So, and that's probably the main reason why we route everything through the mixer, because there is one centralized control of what is muted and what is not muted. So essentially we have 3 channels for Zalon configuration and 3 channels for Salon configuration. The 3 channels are, the first channel is in each one of the groups is Andrea, but a different configuration from the same mic. And the other 2 channels are either the input from Zoom when she's in the Zalon configuration, or the output to Zoom. So it's now for that we use a third client, Zoom client. It's a different client that's doing that, and it's using the display. We have a local camera for the local performers, of course, and we combine that with the audio from the stereo pair. Now that okay, go ahead.
Now, so you're mentioning multiple cameras. I think that's another important thing to mention. So
let me correct that. We have only one camera for each configuration. For Salon is one camera, for Zalon is a different camera. But there's this, we don't have, that's not really what multi-cameras usually is understood as.
Right. Okay, that's what I was going to get to, because when you said multiple cameras, it almost sounds like somebody's switching cameras during a performance, but that's not the case.
No, that's not the case. It's one camera, the laptop camera for Andrea during Zalon configuration, the Zalon segments, and one camera for the Zoom streaming of the local performers during the salon settings.
Well, you might be switching when she is doing the announcing. You'll switch to her camera, but then when someone in the salon is performing, you do switch to a different camera then. So
No. What happens is that we use the same camera for her and for the performers.
Okay.
In the salon configuration, and she moves from one stage to the other.
I see. Okay.
She moves away from her laptop to a standing mic or the place.
Is one person handling? Are you the one person who is handling both the video in Zoom and the audio in the room?
Now, this is how we do it. We have one person in the console that handles all the switching, because that has to be one person, otherwise it can be a mess. We have one person, one videographer doing the local camera work. We have one person doing the Zoom hosting, which means spotlighting the right participant, which keeps changing.
Right. So in essence, you have like a TV truck, but the TV truck is Zoom, and someone is in there and they're spotlighting whether it's a remote performer, whether Andrea is speaking,
at her laptop, or whether it's a salon camera, which is both for Andrea and the performers.
So they're switching cameras.
Yeah, they're switching. Yeah, switching. Yeah, we're switching camera in Zoom. That's where we do the switching of the video feed. Right,
and it's especially important when you have different remote performers. One coming from Chicago and one coming from Florida. So or then
from
somebody
Nepal,
has
or from Nepal, as we did.
Right, or from Nepal, anywhere in the world. Someone has to highlight or spotlight that person and take off the spotlight that was previously given. Right?
Yeah, one thing we do, that one thing is very important with Zoom, is you never remove spotlight. You replace or you add, but you don't remove the last one. Because if you do that, then Zoom takes over and it does whatever it wants, which is a mess.
That sounds like something that may have been learned the hard way.
Well, yeah, sure. Well, yes. They will learn a lot of things the hard way with Zoom. There's a large number of minor details that are really incredible. We are, for instance, we are recording the entire Zoom. We're doing two records. We're doing a local recording, which we use the camera feeding directly the video recorder. So that's one recording, and we also have an audio recording separate from that, because I'll tell you in a little while, that's another complication. But we also do a Zoom recording remotely for the Zoom performers. That one is very, very, very tricky. Why? Because you have to coax Zoom to use high resolution for the recording, which is not easy. It can be done. And you cannot rely on the audio recording. The audio recording the audio tracks that Zoom includes in that recording are awful. You can be hearing a pretty good quality audio when it's
live.
Let's say that you're listening to a remote performer, and we have configured that we hold 2-hour consultation meetings with each remote performer the week before the performance.
Wow.
Because we need to make sure that the configuration is right, the mics are in the right position, the levels are right. There's a lot of things to do. We are recording that, and it's pretty good quality. And if you listen with the headphones, it's really good quality stereo. The recording is bad quality mono.
Really?
That's what Zoom does, yes. And there's no way to coax it to do anything different.
So then
horrendous.
if you have an archive of the whole thing, do you replace the audio?
What I do is when I'm doing the recording, I run an audio recorder simultaneously on the same device, same computer, and I configure it so that it uses as a source, the audio source, a loopback from the speakers. So that has the same quality that I would be hearing with my headphones. So that's good quality. And I have to sync them when I'm editing the video.
I'm curious, does the video and audio stay in sync through a whole song? Or...
Well, as far as it's as good as Zoom is, because I'm recording the video and the audio from the same stream, because it's a loopback from the speakers. It's the same stream. So if Zoom has not screwed up the sync, it is in sync. It's as good as it's as good as what you see and hear when you're watching the performance.
Okay.
That cannot be improved. Usually it's pretty good. It's not good if the remote performer doesn't have good equipment or has bad bandwidth.
So you touched on this a little bit. 2-hour pre-production meeting with each remote guest.
Correct.
And if you have multiple remote guests, that's a whole lot of pre-production work before the salon even begins.
Exactly. We just went through that. We had the last salon was 11 remote performers.
Oh my goodness.
Because it wasn't local because Andrea was away. She was in Italy. So it became a pure Zoom event. So we had 11 performers. We had to conduct 11 consultations.
And where were these performers located for this one?
Well, from California to England to Nepal to Eastern U.S.
It almost sounds like
Santa Fe, New Mexico.
You also have to line up time zones and scheduling.
Exactly. We have a spreadsheet for the consultations. One of the columns in the spreadsheet is a time difference.
Wow. So,
and I'm working with it. Let me clarify. I'm not doing that all by myself. We were 3 people doing the consultations. So we could do about 3 or 4 each one of us. So.
And you do them through Zoom so that you can actually hear it.
Absolutely. We do it through Zoom. No, it must be done that way.
Yeah, because I always tell people in preparation, make sure you're using the exact same thing that you're going to use for the live broadcast. Don't do a test one way and then try to do the live a different way.
Exactly. We insist in that the configuration has to be the same. And once we arrive to the proper settings of Zoom and microphones and levels and all that, we insist that they make note of that. They really have a good recording of what has been done. Notes of what the situation is. The day of the salon, we also have a sound check with each one of them, a 15-minute sound check, to make sure that they haven't screwed up or done anything wrong. One of the things that's a nightmare is that for good music production, you have to go to use original sound for musicians, one of the settings that Zoom provides. Zoom insists in turning that off for any reason.
Every single time.
Yeah, it is a nightmare to make sure that that is not turned off.
Yeah, that's one thing I find is that these systems, especially Zoom, but Zoom, Teams, whichever, WebEx, they're all designed for business chat.
Yeah. Conferencing, yes.
And so the resolution, they're going to dumb down the resolution whenever they can. They're going to reduce the audio bandwidth whenever they can. And it takes a whole lot of diligence and thought and a checklist to make sure this is on, make sure this is on, check this box, turn the echo cancellation off, turn the noise reduction
Depends.
off.
Sometimes, not always. Depends if they are not using headphones. If the remote performers are not using headphones, you cannot turn echo cancellation off. But that does not affect the quality of the sound.
Okay.
Background noise reduction does.
Yes.
Background noise is a killer. Cannot allow that to.
Yeah, and especially when you're dealing with music. I mean, most of the times when I deal with people like with our conversation here, it's not super critical. It doesn't affect a voice very much. But if you take a violin or a piano and things like that, things with natural decay and everything, those types of effects totally destroy what you would expect to hear from that instrument.
One of the problems is that not always we deal with the performers who are, let's say, sophisticated about equipment. They don't know, they have bad equipment, they don't know how to use it. For instance, one thing you cannot do is, we cannot allow someone to use a smartphone or a tablet as their device. That's impossible. You cannot get any good quality because the Zoom client either
takes over.
No, not yes. It doesn't have the parameters. You don't. It doesn't allow you to change the parameters the way a desktop or a laptop version of the app does. And the same is true with the web version of or the browser version of Zoom. Cannot use that. You have to use you have to use the real client.
You have to use this. It has to be this.
and you have to turn off your browser because it kills the bandwidth. So you want, once you have the Zoom session going, you shut off your browsers, anything that uses.
So how long, I'm just curious, how long from when you started doing Zoom and started using Zoom for the salons to when you felt you really started to have it like, we got this. This is finally where I kind of want it to be. How many different concerts was that?
Okay, it depended a little bit on the pandemic, right? And COVID.
Yeah.
So in March 2020 was canceled. That was the only salon that was ever canceled because of the pandemic. The next one, April, was on Zoom, and it remained on Zoom for over a year because there was no possibility of having local audience or local performers because it was too dangerous. I believe in June or July 21, we had a dry run, a salon, a hybrid salon that was not had no audience, no real audience. It was a test of the system, so we made sure that things worked the way we thought they were going to work. We were not sure. We had designed the setup, but say, well, that's my idea. I don't know. Let's test it.
So you literally held a non-concert concert to go through the whole thing.
Correct. And then September of 21, we had the first real hybrid. And then there was a lot of adjustments to be done. We had a certain configuration. We had a mixture of, we had a smaller mixer that did not allow us to do as much as we wanted. So we had, for instance, the stereo pair did not go through the mixer. It went through a different, directly to the interface, basically. And a few other things. Eventually, we got a different mixer, a larger mixer, so we could centralize everything. Have to add things, put a snake so that we could have the mixer in the back rather than next to it. A lot of improvements, and we changed a little bit the configuration, and which improved things. And we went with that. But there are so many details, so many details. For instance, we had the camera, the local camera feeding Zoom, and a different feed for the audio, which comes from the mixer. They're not in sync because the video has a delay. So we had to correct for that. That was not acceptable.
Did you run the audio into the camera?
That's what we did. We had two options. We could put a delay box in the audio, but the delay boxes don't have enough. They don't have enough resolution for the delay to do what we wanted. So we ran the sub output for Zoom to the camera, and then mixed it there and ran everything together back to the laptop that is the salon host.
And I find that is, I do that myself. I have a live show every week, and I just literally, my microphone goes into the camera, and people are always like, how do you make sure it's always in sync? I'm like, because it all goes into the one camera.
Yeah, that was a good solution.
It's like the simplest, most bulletproof way of just put it all into one camera. And then also, if you wanted to get that isolated recording, you just have to record it in a camera. Should everything else fail, you've got that.
Correct, but we run a different sub output for the audio recording. Why? Because during the performance, we may need to ride the level that goes out to Zoom, depending on what the performers are doing and what the levels can get too loud. So we need to ride that all the time.
Right.
For the recording, for the audio recording, I don't want to write anything, because adjusting that later, if I use the audio that I have been writing, it sounds like it's really bad sound or very hard to adjust it in the editing. So I rather have a recording at constant level, low enough so that I'm sure it's not going to have any clipping, and then I adjust it for each set as necessary, but not more than that when editing the video. So yeah, this.
What other little tweak have you found? Now that you've settled in here and you're like, Zoom is working and everything, but like, what were like the magic little nuances? Like you made this little tweak, but it made a big difference.
Well, for instance, Zoom recording can be done in two different ways. It can be a local recording to the computer or a Zoom recording to the cloud. I discovered that the Zoom recording to the cloud does not obey the spotlighting at all. It just does whatever it wants.
Wow. Okay.
Sometimes it obeys it, sometimes it doesn't. If you spotlight more than one person, it goes crazy. It's really a mess. Eventually discover that it's really crazy that Zoom produces two recordings in the cloud. One is not labeled as anything, but it seems to be the speaker, but it's not really the speaker. It's some crazy mix of things. And the other is called gallery recording. It turns out that if you spotlight one person, the no label recording obeys that. It shows whoever you're spotlighting. That's fine. If you spotlight more than one person, that recording goes crazy. It's unpredictable what it's going to do. But the gallery recording now obeys the spotlighting. What is meant to be the gallery recording now shows the correct spotlighting of two or three participants. It's insane. So you could put them together and have the real thing. However, the audio is still very, very bad. And once I try to put that together with my recording of the audio, the one that I did from the loopback that I was mentioning before, and I tried to put that together, it was impossible because there was no sync. There was no way to maintain the sync.
Right.
Because cloud recording did not have the same delays that my local recording had, and it was fluctuating. The difference was not the same all the time. Had been the same, it would have been easy to sync, but there was no way to. You would sync it in one place and it would be auto sync in another place. So I gave up on that. So I have to use the local recording, which does not have the same quality as video quality as a cloud recording, but the audio quality is much better. And for us, that's essential.
Wow. I mean, even that aspect, even just hitting the record button is more complex than you think it would be.
Well, right now we are running 4 clients in the space where this event takes place. Is Andrea's laptop for the Salon configuration, another laptop for the display of the remote performers to the local audience. That's a separate participant that has no audio. It's just purely incoming video. That's all it does. Well, it does other things during the local performance, but that's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with Zoom. Then we have the Salon segment host as another laptop that does the spotlighting, and we have an auxiliary laptop, another one that takes care of a lot of other things. We have to we need to unmute the remote performers. That's another issue, because we cannot allow unmuting, because the audience does whatever it wants. They don't know how to handle. They unmute, they start talking, whatever.
A dog starts barking, or
yeah. So we don't allow a remote audience to unmute themselves, which is a problem with the remote performers. We could make them co-hosts, but it's not that they are malicious, but they don't know what they're doing, so they may hit the wrong thing. So we cannot. We prefer to request that they allow us to unmute them, which is another job. The person who does the spotlighting does also unmutes the performers, the remote performers. We also have. Oh, I forgot the client, the Zoom client that does the display for the remote performance to the local audience also has a camera, a little webcam that shows a local audience. It's just that. It's just steady camera showing the local audience, which we sometimes spotlight that as well to show that people are applauding and things.
Yeah,
I've dynamic.
Well, I've been to the salons from Texas, and it's actually nice to see the reactions of the audience, because as a guest, I could choose to watch the spotlighted show, or I could go to gallery and I can see, the side camera, I can see the camera on the audience. And just like if I was in the room, I can kind of look around a little bit and see what other people's reactions to the music is, and I think that's actually beneficial. You don't think you'd want to see the audience, but it actually does bring you more into the concert.
Yeah, it's a pity that we don't, Zoom does not have the option to spotlight the gallery. In other words, I would like to add to this to the spotlight, add one more, something that's a gallery view. You cannot do that.
Well, you could add another laptop.
No, you cannot. You cannot.
Another guest attendee, leave that on gallery view and then grab that screen.
Oh, yes, you could do that. No, it would have to be with a camera, because you cannot share the screen. If you share the screen, then it takes over the entire screen. That you don't want that.
No, I was just saying, take the HDMI out of the laptop and have it duplicate the display to whatever is external. So in essence, it's the camera.
Oh, camera. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You could do that. But then you would need a second. Okay. You need two laptops here. One, Yeah.
One to provide the multi-view, one to capture it.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
So that would work. Yes, that would work. But we don't have enough laptops already. For instance, I was saying there's an auxiliary laptop that we're using for doing some auxiliary stuff. We control the chat. You put some messages that are important in the chat, links that we want people to have. We need to watch what people say. Someone may have some comments that are important. Someone may say, we don't hear anything, and see if it is one person or all of them. Difference. We have.
I mean, that is also a key thing that I think a lot of people miss is that if you're doing a hybrid event, your cloud audience, the only way they can talk back to you and provide feedback is through the chat. So you need to have somebody watching the chat, because I've done these things myself, and it's only because I switched cameras, but my mic, the audio followed the video, so now my microphone's not on, and somebody says, can't hear you in the chat.
We have 3 remote volunteers, engineers. 2 are listening. 2 are taking care of the remote performers and listening to the out and giving us feedback about what they can hear when we are in the salon configuration. So we don't know what people hear remotely. So we have, and I hesitate to rely on what we see in the chat. I prefer to have 2 experienced people who are listening and telling us what's going on. Then we have a 3rd person who is taking care of audience management. Because one thing that happens is that at the end of each set, we allow the remote audience to unmute themselves so that they can applaud and say, scream, whatever they want to do. And then they have to be muted again. So you disallow unmuting after a few seconds, and then you have to go after those who have forgotten who have not muted themselves. There is a feature that I am asking Zoom to implement, but they don't pay attention. I want them to have a keystroke that would allow me to mute everyone except whoever is spotlighted. I want to mute everyone. You can mute everyone, but that's not what I need. I need to mute everyone except
but exactly, mute everyone but this person.
Yeah. Well, it's very easy. Whoever is spotlighted is not muted. That would be simple, but they're not interested. So there's someone has to do that. Go after mute whoever has not muted himself or herself. So,
all right. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So if I could, what would be like a few key tips if there's somebody out there and they want to do a little musical thing with Zoom? What would be a couple key tips? Let's just say it's not fully hybrid, like you're not trying to broadcast remote.
No, I understand. Use good equipment. External mic is essential. You cannot use the laptop mic. No tablet, no head, not smartphone. Has to be a laptop or desktop with an external mic. That's minimum. Be careful about the configuration of Zoom, particularly original sound for musicians. That's key. And that technical consultation ahead of the performance is essential. If you don't do that, it's almost impossible to deal with all the problems in a 15-minute sound check before the performance. That's not good. With the technical consultation, for instance, I've had situations more than once that I have the consultation, we work for 2 hours and we don't solve all the problems. We have to have another 2-hour consultation. So that's a lot of time for each performer.
Well, that and the fact that I've done technical consultations and we come to the realization that this location is not right. You're not getting enough bandwidth. Is there another place you could be? We'll try it again in a couple of days.
Exactly.
Or the computer you're using is not capable of, for whatever reason, there's a firewall or something on this device. Can you use a different, oh, well, I have a laptop at home. Yes. Okay, let's try that, and it, for me, I have found that there are times when you have that technical consultation and it completely fails. And you need to do another one.
In this last performance, we had a situation in which someone was using a 4-channel virtual mixer with an interface that had 4 inputs and mic inputs, and then there was a virtual mixer, and we couldn't get it to work. And the panning was all wrong. Was all wrong. Eventually, I discovered what happened is that when Zoom saw 4 channels, decided, oh, channel 1 is, in fact, they don't really want 4 channels. They really want 2 channels. 1 must be the left and 2 must be the right of channel 1. And then 3 is the left and 4 is the right of channel 2. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. So right. There was no solution. We had to run it in mono because we needed the 4 mics.
Right. And those are the things you only find out by testing.
Yeah, but it took 2 full consultations to finally figure out what was going on. Those are the main issues.
I also wanted to get. We're talking a lot of different people. How big? Because we talked about people doing the pre-production, people during the production. You've got remote people checking the sound. How big would you say is the total number of people working on a Zoom salon?
Well, for the hybrid, we have right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. The crew is 8 people right now. 9. I
was waiting because whenever I try to count people, there's always one more.
Yeah. Because it is a volunteer organization, we are trying to set it up so that there is more than one person who knows how to do each task. Otherwise, it would be too
Very challenging.
Well, you cannot count on everyone being available every time. You have to have more than one.
And then also cross-training so that one person can do multiple tasks. So if you need to move people around.
True. That's I've been working on that for the past year, trying to get enough people to be able to do that.
Well, as one of the remote audience, and as someone who has been to the salon and recorded the salon for 5 years myself, before I left Philadelphia, I want to thank you very much for your work, so that I can continue to enjoy the salon, even though I am not in Philadelphia and able to be there in person. It's hard to know the value of your work, but I want to be one of the many people, I'm sure, who tell you, thank you very much for your work and everything you put into this, because, the salon is important to me. The salon and what she has created and the type of music, the diversity of music. And there's not, you're not going to hear it on the radio. You're not going to hear this type of diverse type of sampling on the radio. So being able to be exposed to something like this, wherever you may be at this point, is indeed a gift that you're giving to everyone.
Thank you. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Well, I hope this has helped you understand some of the possibilities that you can achieve even with just a business chat application in the cloud. Now, remember, it does take time to make those tools work, and it does take concerted effort and people to make those tools do what you want them to do. As always, I say to rehearse, or to test. You can see that in my 12 tips for streaming success video. As always, my name is Anthony Barocas for Stream Tech. Thanks for watching.